All right. Welcome to Pan-African, your weekly live stream where we talk about all things Africa related and how we can help Africa get back to its rightful place on the world stage. We dive into real life experiences of visiting, moving, and investing on the continent of Africa. We interview folks who are building businesses, and our mission is to support an independent Africa and empower African people on the continent or in the diaspora. So whether you're currently in Africa, you've recently migrated, your ancestors were trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade, or you're a foundational Black American, this live stream is for you. I'm Joe Hatagwa, your host, the founder of Authentic African, and each week I'll be sharing my experiences living, traveling, and investing in Africa, which I've been doing over the last 8 years and 4 years respectively. And from time to time, I'll also be interviewing folks who have made the move to the continent or others who have businesses focused on the continent. So today I'll be hosting Kelvin Amafina, who is the founder of Langovest. And we're going to have a powerful conversation about why billion-dollar projects often don't end up being what we think they are on the continent, the surprising lessons from rebuilding during war, in the Ukraine war in particular, a practical blueprint for how the diaspora can fund real growth on the continent. And we're going to have a conversation about Africa's infrastructure and how it has been previously top down. And what if we flip the script, right? What does the future look like if we do it from the ground up? So before we get into this conversation, I'd like to bring Kelvin in to introduce himself. So Kelvin, welcome to the live stream.
Thank you, Joe. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to share the time with your community. So thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you for taking the time. We got a chance to catch up a little over a week ago while I was in Ghana. I'm back in New York, guys. If you guys can't, you guys know. If you know, you know. You guys watch the live streams, you know. I'm back in New York, and you know when Kelvin and I spoke, we talked a little bit about what Kelvin is up to with Langovest, and it really does fit into one of the three pillars that this platform is around, right? So visiting, moving, and investing in Africa. And so many people who follow the platform and people who will end up watching this video are curious about investing and where should they be deploying their capital, you know, how should they be thinking about their money, especially those who have the finances to invest. There's a lot of conversation about not getting scammed, right? Or people who've been scammed, or, you know, different projects on the continent and what makes the most sense. Should it just be in real estate? Should we be investing in startups? And I like the approach of talking about infrastructure, right? And I think that's really interesting what Langovest is doing. So before we get into the conversation about infrastructure projects and what hasn't been working, what we feel is the next wave of these kinds of investments, I do want to ask you about your background and a little bit about Langovest. And so let's start with that. So first things first, Kelvin, can you give us a little background on your career and what it is that you do for a living?
Yes. So thank you very much again, Joe. Thank you for having me. Let me start with a bit of my personal story. So my professional background is as a medical doctor. I studied medicine in Ukraine and I practiced medicine for a while. But here's the thing, while I was in medical school, I was always interested in, you know, several business opportunities here and there. I guess it's something I picked up from my mom. She was always very entrepreneurial. And while in medical school, I launched my own bakery. I don't know if you know agege bread. It's a bread that is being sold in Nigeria. And so identifying, it's a funny story, identifying that there was a need for this bread among students. I started my own bakery, and doing that kind of confirmed or gave me the confirmation that it was not just about having business ideas. I had a thrill from developing business from the stage of conception to a stage of having customers pay for it. So after medical school, I moved back to Nigeria. And while I was there, I started what would be the first version of Langovest. It was actually called GYSME, Grow Your Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise. And for some months, myself and my team, we tried to engage, although we did it on a smaller scale there, right? We tried to help business go digital. We tried to help small business register with CAC, the governing body for business registration in Nigeria, to get websites. And uh, after some time, and honestly, probably everyone who's moved back to the continent after some time would admit this. I guess I was not ready for the reality of things. And so the challenge is basically, and we're not able to meet the targets we had. However, that experience did leave me with a lot of lessons. But then the question was, how can I continue my profession as a medical doctor and my passion for business? And so I decided to go back to Ukraine and further my education to get a degree in healthcare management. And during the course of this time, while I was getting this degree, the war started in 2022. The war broke out and between Russia and Ukraine. And, Joe, I had firsthand experience in, I was able to see, I got a front row seat to see how Ukraine's infrastructure was under constant attack on a day-to-day basis. And so this over the last 4 years, especially with my background in healthcare management, where I had the opportunity to develop my skills as a researcher, project finance, developing different innovative models to finance different projects, systems design. I studied Ukraine's response. I studied how Ukraine responded to this attack on their infrastructure. And I started studying the whole topic of infrastructure very deeply to understand what really is infrastructure, because the truth is we do not understand how much role infrastructure plays in our day-to-day life until it's actually missing, or until we can see the visible symptoms of its failure. And this is what we saw in Ukraine every day, whether it was energy, transport, medical facilities, under constant attack. And so one thing led to another, and I rekindled my passion for GYSME, but this time decided to start the company or the firm as Langovest. So that's basically a summary of how I got from medicine to right now starting Langovest.
Awesome. And so, I want to talk about this a little bit. So, when it comes to infrastructure, in the United States, when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about fixing potholes, we talk about roads and bridges, right? And people might remember under the previous administration, there was a bipartisan bill that got passed into law, this Build Back Better bill, right? And it was meant to give some jobs and to talk about building infrastructure. And it was private-public partnerships around infrastructure. But it's just a word that people use. I don't think people are very clear on what infrastructure means. So I think before we dive into what you're doing with Langovest, can we get a definition of what you mean by infrastructure? And then I'd like to hear what Ukraine was doing and is doing that is working to build back a city that has been, or build back cities and areas that have been devastated by war.
So, very good question. And this is, when you ask people what infrastructure is, you generally get one of two answers. Either people tell you this infrastructure are mega projects, fixed assets, like you mentioned, right? Roads, airports, refineries, and they would be right. However, there's a second category or a second definition of infrastructure, and this is basically any technology that enables life. I'll tell you what I mean. So everyone knows elevators. We use elevators every day, right? Or lifts, as some people might call them. So if this technology helps you to get from first floor to the 25th floor, it is an infrastructure, because it is enabling life. It is enabling mobility, because in the absence of the elevator, you would have to climb 25 flights of stairs, which is what we saw happen in Ukraine on a daily basis. If you're in an apartment block and you're living on the 25th floor, when there is power outage, you find yourself climbing 25 stairs of on a daily basis. And so this is what we mean by infrastructure: technology that enables life. If it enables you to carry out day-to-day living, this is infrastructure. So one very good example where Ukraine was able to innovate, especially given the fact that I was volunteering and with my background in healthcare, was the advent of mobile health clinics. And so because of Ukraine's healthcare facility was under constant attack from Russia, what the government managed to do was, in a space of 2 years, over 250 mobile health clinics were released and were put into operation, were deployed and put into operation. And seeing this on the side and just observing, the question was, wait a minute, if the government managed to deploy 250 mobile clinics in a space of 2 years, even less, you cannot build 5 hospitals in 2 years, right? It's impossible. And then I started to question, is infrastructure size or is it in function? Because what the mobile clinics could do, the function, when you really go deep into it, the function of providing healthcare, the function of providing treatment, the function of providing medical services to patients, it's the same function you get at a hospital. The only difference is with a mobile clinic, it is small, scalable, flexible, and very cheap to design and deploy. This whole experience changed my whole definition and opinion about infrastructure.
Got it. And so that's really helpful. I mean, it's basically enabling life, right? Is what you said. So I never even heard that definition before until you and I had spoken, because I really only thought about it as roads and bridges, right? So now to tie this into Africa, right? Because
Yes.
obviously I use the example of the Build Back Better bill in the United States. You use the example of the Ukraine. We want to talk about the continent of Africa and how investing in infrastructure can really help move us into the next phase of seeing Africa get back to its rightful place on the world stage, which is really what this whole platform is about. But I guess before we kind of tie that together with Langovest, I do want to talk a little bit about infrastructure projects of the past, and also just the how people have been wrong about infrastructure in the past, or how it's been done, and like what you're proposing that would be different than how it's been done previously. Because I do want us to get an idea of what problem you're solving, right? And then also for those who are interested in joining the Langovest community and considering how they could deploy capital, I want them to understand where it was, what's been wrong with how it's been done, and what you're proposing to be done differently.
So, we're not necessarily even proposing anything entirely new, because when you look at what is considered a popular thinking, everyone agrees that infrastructure will be necessary for economic growth and transformation in Africa, whether you're asking think tanks or established institutions or thought leaders. It's a known truth. It's a popular truth. Infrastructure is necessary. Infrastructure development is necessary for economic growth and transformation. Here is where we're coming in with Langovest and what we're trying to say, where we are saying, can we complement? Because I'll tell you the problem with the current thinking of infrastructure. We have a lot of private institutions, like you mentioned, PPP models, they're already present. For example, China as a foreign government is very involved through FDIs in Africa, investing a lot in African infrastructure. However, there is a problem in Africa. The problem in Africa is we lack the political maturity. So the institutions lack the maturity to see infrastructure projects through. And so what you find out is a lot of infrastructure projects are extended over the time required because yes, most African governments will go for the big infrastructure because they want to score political points, right? Your dams, your rail systems, your transport systems, they want to score political points. It's not necessarily because of development. And on the second hand, we lack financial institutions, right? And the reason why this is important is, Joe, if you look at countries, I mentioned this to you the first time we spoke, and this is something that has always amazed me. Shenzhen, uh, one of the most, it's basically the backyard of Hong Kong. You look at Shenzhen 30 to 50 years ago, it was nothing more than an old port city, basically. There was no development. It was actually called the dump yard of Hong Kong. But today, Shenzhen it's a marvel. It's a modern economic marvel. And you could see the same thing in Dubai. Dubai was an old fishing port city and over the years developed. And when you look at these cities, you can find three factors. Number one was political reform around ease of doing business, ease of investment. The second thing, so by creation of special economic zones, creation of special business zones in this country. The second thing was a massive capital investment. And then the third thing was innovative infrastructure technology. But the problem is in Africa, we're trying to implement actions and implement infrastructure development policies that we do not have the institutions to see through. And this is where the question is, well, can we change our focus, or at least can we add to the question or to the conversation small, modular, scalable, flexible infrastructure? Not to compare, we still need the big infrastructure, we still need the big roads, we need the ports, but okay, can we focus on infrastructure that could be deployed in months rather than years? Can we focus on infrastructure that requires smaller investment rather than large investment? Can we focus on infrastructure that the private sector, especially retail, can be involved in rather than government and big financial firms? And I think the question that we're trying to answer is that, can we create a platform where we're focused on this type of infrastructure? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I mean, just to recap what I understood of what you just said, and for those who are just joining, I think the challenge that we've seen previously and historically is, there's an election cycle every 4 or 5 years, right? And I can tell you, as someone who's lived on the continent through multiple election cycles, through multiple countries, there's always one big infrastructure project that is happening right at the end of the first term, right? There's a road being built, there's an airport being built, there's a bridge being built, an MOU for a bridge gets signed, right? And that almost always happens right at the end of an administration. They start the process. And to your point, many times it doesn't get finished because it lacks the necessary let's say resources to ensure that it gets sought, it goes through to fruition way that is beneficial for long-term use. And so I think this is interesting, the idea of smaller modular infrastructure projects that can actually be seen and done in weeks and months instead of many years. And an example I'll just add to this too is there is a road project that has a 25-year payment plan that I saw in Sierra Leone, where the Chinese helped build a road. They have 2 toll booths. And from what I understand, it's going to be 25 years before that will be paid back. Airports, etc., right? And so I think in this instance, what we're talking about is smaller infrastructure projects that can be done in shorter amounts of time. Can you give some examples of what some of those more modular infrastructure projects are that could be done, as opposed to the airports, these 50-mile roads? Like, what could be done in that time frame that can really help advance the continent, right? What kind of modular infrastructure projects are you talking about?
Now, Joe, let me just make a very quick clarification that it's not in opposition. We're not trying to oppose the big projects. What we're saying is, can we share the burden, right? While the government is focused on those big projects, can the private sector, can retail step in and focus on smaller projects that have immediate impact on lifestyle living? So such example, like I already mentioned, for example, mobile clinics, where it would take 3 to 5 years to build a big hospital. One very good example I like to use is Lagos. Lagos is a city of 20 million people. I grew up in Lagos. And you have maybe 3 to 4 big hospitals serving 20 million people, and the rest are private hospitals. And it's not a surprise why healthcare is not up to the standard in Lagos. And so where you have mobile clinics that can serve different communities, can serve different types of needs, right? You can have operating mobile clinics for those who are not very familiar with medicine. You can have mobile clinics just for therapeutic purposes. You can have mobile clinics just for diagnostic purposes. That's for example. Another example of such project are water filtration machines, where you're rather focused or allowing the government to, through sanitation plans to provide access to clean water, like clean tap water to homes. You could have water filtration machines. We see this all across, Asia and Europe. Here in Ukraine, where I live at the moment, we see this all across European countries. There are, you know, water filtration machines that help people to receive clean drinking water at close proximity to their residential buildings. So we can take the burden of the government, right? Another very good example I like, and this is to the point that such projects are already being operated in Africa. We just need to focus more. So one of such good examples are cold storage. So Joe, in Africa, we have a problem with, we import a lot of food, but we also have very, very huge amount of food waste, right? So you have crops that farmers harvest go to waste. I think the amount quoted is $3 billion per year. And so there's this operator in Nigeria. They're called Cold Hubs, and we're following them. And they're one of the projects that we featured on our platform right now, one of the first, because we're focused on agriculture at the moment, technology around agriculture. And what they do is they've set up points around the market so that when farmers come, they can leave the crops and extend the life cycle of such crops. And so now, if you want to sell as a market woman, you just go to this point. You have your own storage there, just storing it for you. You're paying per month, and you can get your crops out and sell. And so, the innovation can really cut the food wastage, crop wastage by 30 to 40%. We're talking $1 to $1.2 billion a year. That's a lot of money that can, enrich farmers and help them to even improve their business. So there are a lot of projects that are being operational, and so the idea is you have them small, they're flexible, and they're scalable.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really useful to give some of those examples. Now, one of the questions that somebody asked is, how are mobile clinics going to work if the roads are so bad? As you mentioned, this is meant to be complementary to
Yes.
what is already happening. And obviously mobile clinics will only work in areas where roads make it available. But let me take a step back. Some of these mobile clinics actually can operate in certain regions, but in an area where people can still get to them, right? And so, even if you're in a rural area that doesn't have the greatest of roads, it's easier to get to a mobile clinic that's closer to you than to go all the way to the capital city or another city. So I think to answer that question, a mobile clinic is also a clinic that just is something that can be built without building a large hospital, but and can be in places where it's a little easier for people to get to. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to
Joe. Let me just add to that. So again, we're not trying to oppose. So let me paint a picture, right? You have one general hospital in a community serving 200,000 people, where in under normal circumstances or under current circumstances, this hospital is understaffed and uh, overpopulated in terms of patient visit. What you could do is have mobile clinics that offer just therapeutic services, and you reduce the dependency on these general clinics. And so patients only go to the big hospital when they need special care, or when they need care from specialist doctor. But if it's just from their GP, or if it's from their primary care physician, they wait and there's a schedule. You see when the mobile clinic will be visiting your clinic. And this is something that this type of projects, we don't need to wait for the government. We don't need to wait for African leaders. We can take initiative and we can take agency.
Well put. And so you mentioned that we don't need to wait for the government. We can take agency and initiative. So what does that look like in terms of what Langovest is doing? I want to understand what exactly you are proposing with Langovest, and how can people begin to take part in this?
So we are rolling out in two phases mainly. We're in the first phase, right? And phase number one is to build a knowledge base. And what we're doing is our proprietary scoring system is built based on what is publicly available there, right? We have S&P and we have Moody's. These are, credit rating systems that already, just like I said, we already have actual infrastructure invested in Africa. So you have institutions like Old Mutuals and private equities that already invest in infrastructure projects. And what they do is they actually rate projects before they commission them. And so what we're doing is we're building our own proprietary score, Langovest. We're taking all publicly available information. I will also not go into details, but we're in indirect talks with some local credit agencies in Africa. What we want to do is build a score where, based on our score, investors will be able to take investment decisions. So right now, well, you cannot invest on Langovest or using the Langovest platform. What you can do is you can see featured projects. You can express a declaration of interest, a DOI. That's registering your interest, so that whenever these projects get vetted and receive the score, you'll be informed, and you can be part of a community. You can be part of a community around different discussions. Like I said, right now we're focused mostly on agriculture, and we want to share. We want to hear the opinion of people. Why is it interesting? Because we think it's not only in funds, and that's the problem. And this is where it's interesting for myself as part of, as a person part of the diaspora, as an African part of the diaspora, yourself as well. We can share knowledge, we can transfer skills. So on the platform, let's say, for example, you have experience with technology around agriculture, you can come on the Langovest platform and you can mentor local farmers, and they can sign up to learn how to apply new technology to their farms or to their agriculture business. So right now on Langovest, we're focused on community, we're focused on knowledge, and we're focused on building that foundational base. Phase two, once we get all the required license and once we've fully developed our score, then we'll give our users the opportunity to invest, because we're very compliant, conscious, and we want to make sure that we follow all due process.
Awesome. And I wanted to pull up the site, but for whatever reason, it's not showing the site that I wanted to show. By my challenge with this platform is the there we go. So you mentioned that you guys are you're focusing on, you're able to show your interest now, right? So I think you mentioned there's 15 projects already, and you've already collected over 1,000 DOIs. And so you already have a couple of score sectors in place as well. So You know, and we'll talk about this in a second, but I just wanted to pull that up while you were talking, just so people know that the site is live. So now let's talk about that. So, you know, I think one of the things that I thought was interesting is you're starting by asking people first what they're okay. Actually, before I get into that, there is a question. What specific country or countries are we talking about investing in? That was the first question, and I'll get to the next one.
You know, what's interesting is I read an article today that said the reason why a lot of businesses do not scale past their local country where they start, why you have several startups start in one country and they're not able to scale, is because Africa is very, very diverse in its laws. You can have a business be successful in Nigeria, and you take it to Ghana and you're not successful because the laws there are different, unfortunately. Or you can have a business be successful in Nigeria and it's not successful in Sierra Leone, for example. Right now, we're focused on Nigeria for obvious reasons, because that's the country where we see the most robust innovation. That's the country where we see the most application of new technology into different sectors, especially, like I said, agriculture. And so we're focused on Nigeria right now.
And also, you happen to be Nigerian as well, right?
Of course, I happen to be Nigerian, so yes.
You have the connection to the country. Okay, so so that leads to my next question then. So, and my question really is just about, you know, the idea of starting with asking people what kind of projects and products that they're looking to invest in. So I want to talk to you about your decision to do that. Like, I mean, you said you obviously at this point in time you've started with agriculture just because you have a bit of insight into that, but you also are open to hearing from the community, right? So I mean, that's partly why we're here. But talk about the idea to begin by asking folks what they're interested in, and why did you come to that conclusion that it made sense to do that?
Yes, because a very important. So let me take a couple of steps back. We have an infrastructure deficit of somewhere between 90 to 130 billion dollars on a yearly basis. Depends on your sources and who you're asking. And the diaspora sends back $100 billion in remittance every year. Again, depends on who you're asking, because that's official sources. We also have unofficial sources. Sure. And so it's a problem that already has a solution. It's just that we're not looking in the right place, because when people say there's no money to invest in Africa, I'm saying, okay, well, the diaspora sends money back home, and the information is 80 to 90% of their money goes into consumption, family emergency, and most times informal investments such as real estate, which is safe. I understand. We spoke about this last time. Real estate is safe investment. It's stable. However, it does not drive economic transformation. And so the mission at Langovest is because we really believe that infrastructure development can lead to the industrialization that Africa desperately needs for us to be on the same level, or at least to be moving towards the level as our counterpart continents like in Asia and the Middle East. We've seen this in different cities. We've seen this in different countries. Infrastructure development will drive economic transformation. Now, why is it important for us to hear from the community? Why is it important for us to understand what they want to invest in? Because we believe that the diaspora will play a very important role. And so we don't want to impose, we want to ask, where are you looking at? What are you interested in? Again, because it's not just only about the financial investment. It's also about the investment with skill, with knowledge, and with their time. Because if and I'm using myself as a point of reference. I believe, and I have friends as well, who we were talking about this before we went live. People want to return back home. You want to return back home, you spend 10, 15, 20 years. It's not just only to go home and receive investments from real estate. I think a lot of people, even in their late 60s, would want to be able to be involved somehow in the continent. And so think of it like before you eventually retire and return back home, you're directly involved in a particular infrastructure project. And when you go back home, you have something to even do. You have something you could be directly involved in. And so this is why it's important for us to listen to what people want, because then there's a continuation. You can invest your money, but at the same time, you can invest your knowledge. And at the same time, you can participate should you decide. So for example, there are a lot of people interested in farming. You can start investing in farming. You could start developing technology around the sector, and say 5 to 10 years down the line, you decide you want to move back. You already have something to do once you get back there. And it's out of your interest. It wasn't imposed on you.
All good points. So we had a couple questions from IG that I wanted to get to. Just so those of you watching on Instagram, I appreciate your patience. You guys have been sticking with us. With IG, I can't put your comments up on screen, so I have to copy and paste them. So there were a couple of questions that came from Instagram. The first one is from Raphael SNA, and the question was, wouldn't it be faster to develop the company if you started from an urban environment instead of rural one, as you're suggesting? I think they might be misinterpreting what your thoughts are, yes. But can you answer this question just so that they can understand exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, let me just clarify. So I think this person is talking about the mobile clinics example. Right. So what we're doing right now is we're building the intelligence layer to help investors make investment decisions. And so you have different operators, whether in the rural area, whether in urban areas operating. And so we don't have necessarily a filter. As far as, again, we're going to vet projects, we're going to give you a score. And then at the moment, at the phase where Langovest is, you have the decision to either use our score to make informed investment decisions in sectors that you're interested in. And eventually, once we start giving our users the opportunity to invest, it will be across the board, different sectors, rural, urban. The most important thing is it's infrastructure technology, and it is small, it's scalable, it's flexible, and it's modular, because we really believe that that's the kind of infrastructure that will drive economic growth and transform life on the continent.
Absolutely. I know the answer to this already, but I do want to just ask this question. So Farquan Ali is asking, when you say diaspora, does that include African Americans or just Nigerians?
Absolutely. So we have to be careful here. We're talking about investment. We're talking about giving investment guidance and advice. And so you have to pay attention to a lot of there are investment protection schemes for people, for example, who are citizens of the US. So it's important to follow compliance routes, right? Even in Nigeria, before you start publicly, giving investment advice or saying you're pulling investments, you have to be SEC compliant. And so it's very important. We want to build Langovest properly. And that's why right now someone says, when are we going to move to stage 2? We'll move to stage 2 when we have all the legal checks. Once we're fully compliant with the SEC, then we'll move to stage 2. Right now, we want to build a community. We want to hear what the diaspora are talking about, what they're interested in, what sector are they interested in, and we want to vet projects. We want to feature projects. You can express interest, collect data at the moment, and eventually, and okay, also one more thing I missed out. I beg your pardon, Juries. We'll also be giving research-based content, like I said, to inform investment decisions. Apart from our score, you'll also be able to get research-based content. So right now it's all about knowledge base, yep. And eventually we'll get to that point where we can help people invest.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I think it's really important to understand that today, guys, you can get knowledge. And you could technically invest if you wanted to, but Langovest is giving you knowledge to begin with. Phase 2, stage 2 will be where Langovest actually can give you investment guidance based on SEC regulations, etc. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but anytime people talk about investment guidance online, many times they have to say, I am not an investor. I am not an accredited investor. I am only able to just give you my opinion. It's a very specific thing. The United States has very strict laws and stringent laws on this. So understand that right now what we're talking about is this giving you more knowledge, right? And that's what Langovest is going to be, is a repository of information so you can make your own informed decisions when you decide to. And then eventually Langovest will be able to help you actually allocate those funds. So I think that's really important. I'm glad somebody asked that question. So there was another comment that somebody mentioned here that I just wanted to put up on screen. Rob Marley Creation says, uplifting and investing in communities in need, beautiful intentions, people like you make it possible. So just somebody giving you props for what you're working on. And then there was another question from someone who's been patient on IG, and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And I think it was, is it Twilliam? Is asking, how can we reach out to you directly?
So if you go on the Langovest website, langovest.com, and scroll down to the, if you could just pull that. Please scroll down, Joe. I think right above the footer. Yeah, even further down. Yes, there you can click talk to the founder and you'll be able to book an appointment with me via Calendly, and I'll be very happy to listen, to share my thoughts even further, and yeah, we can cooperate.
Awesome. And then and I guess the other call to action for folks now too is I know that you want to hear from folks, right? You want people to be able to talk about what you're interested in, what you're interested in investing in, what you want to hear more about, so that you guys can start to do some of that information sharing. What is the call to action following this live stream? So people who are watching this, what do we want them to do?
Sign up, join the community. Right now, we only have agriculture, community around agriculture. There are different topics. And over the next couple of days, we'll be featuring different projects in the sectors. We'll also be pushing out our different research contents. We have a lot of contents we've been working on, myself and the team. And again, it's to build that confidence. You can get value from the information we summarize. If you're a person interested in agriculture, you're interested in investing in agriculture back home, you can take that information and inform yourself on the various opportunities on the continent right now. And so, yeah, community content and basically just contributing in any way you want.
And then there's also the survey, right? I have the survey in the description of the live stream. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, there is a link in the description that will take you to the survey where you can go through and fill that out. Let me show you what the survey looks like, folks. Of course, I don't have it pulled up right now because it's been a busy day. Kelvin knows how busy this day has been. He and I spoke about this. So let me pull that up on screen right now so you guys can see that. Let me go ahead and share that really quickly. So there is a survey. I want you guys to see the survey so you know what exactly you'll be filling out. So the link is in the description. I went through this in the promotional video I did on Monday, the normal live stream time. But it asks you where you're located, what country you live in, how you describe your connection to the continent, a bunch of different questions here. It's about a 2-minute survey. It doesn't take long to fill it out at all. And then you want to go to the site and sign up so that you can get regular updates, and then you can be abreast of all the different companies that Kelvin and team are looking into. There's a couple of other questions that we have here, so I want to get to those. Farquan Ali says, what business you think will be lucrative one in the, do you know how to pronounce this area of Lagos? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Badagry area of Lagos.
Badagry area of Lagos. Now, again, this is It's not SEC certified for investment advice or business advice, but as someone who is a Nigerian who you lived in Lagos, right? Did you live in
Yes,
Lagos?
yes. Born and brought up in Lagos. I'm Lagos in my blood through and through.
There it is. So this is just your opinion, right? But they're asking that question of what business would be a lucrative one in Lagos. I have some ideas, but you can
Not
please.
not investment advice, but not investment advice, but water filtration. Lagos, it's quite interesting that in Lagos, you still have problem with clean drinking water, right? And there are a lot of places, Badagry being one, Lekki area, Ajah being one, and they don't have access to clean drinking water. So uh, that's one business idea I can give.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are many different business ideas. I mean, one of the things that I would say is it because Lagos has so many people, there are more people registered to vote in Lagos than there are in New York City. In New York City, there's about 8 million to 9 million people in New York City. There are 9 million people registered to vote in Lagos, right? So just to kind of give you guys an idea of the amount of people, one of the infrastructural challenges is light. So, and there are an abundance of solar companies in Nigeria and the country and in Lagos in general. But you have so many people that you can really. There are so many businesses in a country like Nigeria and in Lagos that you could start that you will not run out of customers. There's no such thing as what's the word I'm looking for? Saturation in Nigeria. Over 200 million people in the country. Lagos has 20 plus million people. So, I would say get on the ground first, though. Make sure you're living in country. You can see what the competition looks like. You can see what problems people are already solving. Talk to people on the ground before you start any business on the continent. But I would specifically say in Nigeria, because you want to make sure you understand the lay of the land before you start any business there. But just keep in mind those numbers, though. Those numbers are really important. Go ahead, please.
If I could just add to what you said, it's quite funny because my team we researched one business last week, and I was quite amazed. So what they do, and folks can check it out. It's called Rescue X. Very interesting. What they do is they set up different hubs for fuel delivery and for people to come. So we know that generators are a big part of households in Lagos, and so you could some people do not have the time to directly go to the fuel station to buy fuels to power their generator, and so they've tried to set up different hubs in different locations, and I really thought that was very interesting. Which I personally don't like this project because I don't think it does well for the overall community. I mean, there are a lot of accidents that could happen. Not to make it's not bad PR for their business, but from a business point of view, it makes a lot of sense, and it falls actually under the category because what they've done is they've taken a fuel station that is big and fixed, and again, this is to drive home the idea so that folks can really understand when we say small, scalable, flexible, modular, and they've broken it down where you don't have to now necessarily go to one point to get fuel. It can come to you, or it's at least now closer. And that's the same logic and idea behind the mobile clinics. It's the same logic and idea behind the water filtration machine. And if we start, which is what we're trying to do, just to drive home the point, what we're trying to do is change the logic behind infrastructure. Can we think about infrastructure differently? Can we start seeing infrastructure from that lens? Because there are already people doing stuff like that. If we just make it front and center, maybe we could innovate even further. I mean, there are a lot of sectors.
There it is. Self-Care Agent says, God bless you and the work you're doing. Have a great day. Shout out to Self-Care Agent. So yeah, I mean, look, and Dr. Edu has reposted the stream. So shout out to her. I know that is a Nigerian name. Is this where is this from? Is this Omolola? Is that
She's Yoruba.
Is that Yoruba? Yeah, Omolola is yeah. Okay. That is a Yoruba name. I don't ever want to mess it up. I always try to guess if it's a Yoruba Igbo name. So I think it's super important. I think for all of you guys who've been on the platform, have been going back and forth to the continent, and have been thinking about how you want to invest and where you want to invest. And the reason why I liked what Kelvin and his team are doing at Langovest is they want to at least share what is out there, what's available for you to at least gain some insight and knowledge of the space, right? And smaller scale projects. There are so many people talking about tech investments. Those guys are looking for 2 million, 5 million, $20 million investments. Single individuals are not going to be able to invest in those businesses, right? Those are going to be up to the private equity firms, the venture capital firms. And it's just not going to be feasible for everyday people who are watching this live stream to be able to invest in. And so how can people invest, right? And I have been always asking that question myself. People have been asking me that question. And so I thought it'd be great to have you on, Kelvin, because you're talking about those small scale investments that people will eventually be able to do through you. But in the meantime, some things that they can do research on, if they so choose to decide to take some action on their own. You'll at least be able to give them insights and information into the companies that are actually making those strides to get Africa back to its rightful place on the world stage. Before we go, do you have any final thoughts that you want to give to the folks that are watching? And of course, as always, almost an hour in, a bunch of people just joined. So those of you who are just joining, we had a great conversation with Kelvin about Langovest infrastructure, and all of the above. If you guys want to hear more about that, you can go back to the beginning of the live stream and watch that. But yeah, final thoughts from you, Kelvin, for the folks that have watched all the way through.
Yes. So first of all, thank you again for having me, Joe.
Sure.
I believe that one of the solutions to Africa's underdevelopment would be robust infrastructure development. And my experience in Ukraine allowed me to see that infrastructure doesn't have to be big and fixed assets. It can be small and scalable, flexible, and modular. And this requires a paradigm shift. It requires a change in thinking, because most people would not even describe infrastructure the way we see infrastructure now. And it's going to take some time, and we're happy to play that role, to educate, to teach, to show people. Because I mean, if you want people to change the way they think about something, you have to be very patient and you have to educate. And that's why we're even starting from research, knowledge. We want to educate. We want our user base to be confident. And we believe that once there is a understanding that infrastructure is not something that has to be left alone for the government to design, develop, and finance, that we, the private sector, the retail, we can partake in it, then it's just a question of how can I do it in a safe and secure way. And that's where our Langovest score comes in, where hopefully with the score, you'll be able to make informed investment decisions in infrastructure across various sectors. So right, I employ everyone to please join, sign up to Langovest, come and be part of the conversation, come and help us build. We don't want to build this apart from the diaspora. We want to build together. We want to listen. We want to hear what you need to make you confident to make investment decisions. That way we can build tailor-made resources that will help inform you for your investment decisions.
Absolutely. And I will say, for those of you who just joined on X, shout out to Dr. Omalola, who just reposted this on her X platform, because a bunch of people just joined from X. So I just sent the poll and the survey as a reply to this live stream. So for those of you who are watching the live stream on X and you're interested in learning more, click on the poll that is just underneath the live stream video. You'll see it on my page. You'll see it there. I'll also put it as a comment, I guess. Actually, I did do it as a comment. I did it as a, I don't even know how to use X. It's been a million years since I used X. So, but you'll see it there. It's right there just beneath the video. So, those of you all who stayed this long, I want to thank you again for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, you follow on all platforms, Authentic African, everything Authentic African. We're across every single platform, including X, aka Twitter. Make sure you head over to langovest.com, but also make sure you click on the link in the description of this video and in X or wherever you're watching as a reply to this video. There's a survey. We want you to fill out that form, and you'll get on the email list as well for any updates from the Langovest team. And if you know anybody who's interested in investing on the continent, who's thinking about these things, anybody you've heard have these conversations, make sure you share this video with them through whatever means you normally do. We see a lot of people sharing them on WhatsApp, so feel free to share it that way. And then lastly, Kelvin, I want to thank you for taking the time to join. Some people are asking if we can take some final questions. So
Yeah, okay.
so there are some additional questions. All right, so we will take some final questions if that's okay with you, Kelvin, since more people are joining and more questions are coming in.
I mean, yeah, you're the one who's had a crazy day, so yeah. I mean, it's 1 a.m. here, but I'm ready to go, so no problem.
Okay, it looks like there's just a couple more questions. Somebody who asked for taking some final questions. I want to see some of those questions, but this question is about you talking about your doctoral experience. We don't have to spend too much time on that because that is not really related to this discussion.
Yeah.
But I think they need to know that you are an actual doctor, a medical doctor, right? So maybe you want to speak to that to some degree, I guess.
By the way, folks, just look right behind me. That's a plaque, my certificate. If I don't know if it's visible. In any case, I specialize in infectious disease, and so again, it's something it's a question I have to answer. First of all, I had to answer the question with my parents and my folks. But while I was in medical school, like I said in the beginning, I was always interested in business, and so yes, I finished medicine, graduated. Got my degree and decided to go back practice for a bit, like internship, and then also started GWA SME, the first version of Langovest. When it failed, I decided to come back to Ukraine to further my studies and qualification in healthcare management. And so, yeah, ever since I've basically after my degree, I've just fully focused and devoted myself to Langovest. I have a couple of volunteer projects here that I do in Ukraine that I still help from time to time, which also informs my experience, but I don't know how related it is. It's something eventually, I eventually plan to go back home, hopefully within the next couple of months. But we're getting very, very good experience. And so one of the things we're even seeing in Ukraine, I forgot to mention this, is modular structures. I will not go into too much details, where they're building prefabricated parts of the hospitals and they're attaching it to hospital buildings. And so that's a project right now that I'm actively volunteering in and also gaining a lot of experience.
There you have it. So, some of these questions are not specific to this conversation, but I mean, one of them, I think this would probably be worth like a, AI search. But somebody asked, what percentage of Nigerians abroad desire to leave the West and go back to Nigeria to invest and to live? That is, I'm not sure that's a question we can answer here. I think that but I do think a simple search in Chat GPT or Grok or DeepSeek, depending on where you are in the world, and what you're interested in utilizing, could potentially answer that question, right? So I think that's I saw that question. Since people are asking us to answer additional questions, I did want to say, I don't know if you have that number off the top of your head, but I think there's going to be some polls out there, I'm sure.
I can contribute. We have our own polls data sets. So from respondents that took our polls, because we have that question, do you see yourself going back home, or do you have an emotional connection? And approximately 50 to 60%. But it's also important to notice that it depends on the age, right? So this is mostly for young people between 20 and 40 years. I think people already in their 50s or 60s are free to go back home and start all over again.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, you know, and it's hard to answer that question, but survey understanding the investment potential of the Nigerian diaspora. 70% of diaspora respondents said they would like to invest more in Nigeria, increase their investment. In the same survey, only 9% they said they would not like to invest at all. There was another study about 8 years ago, and a large percentage of them said they do desire to return and invest. But the numbers I'm seeing here, right around 70% of the respondents who take different surveys are interested. Okay, so this question that Zach has, is there an online Black-owned business directory that is continuously updated that the diaspora can access? There are a couple of different companies that have some version of this. I'm working on something like this, so I'd like to share one in the future, but I don't know of any one today. But keep coming back, Zach. We will update you as time goes on. I think that actually answers all the questions. So I want to thank you again, Kelvin, for doing this. I want to thank everybody who's watched thus far. Those of you who just joined, thank you guys all for joining. And look, guys, we'll be back next Monday with Ivy Prosper. News about the continent. News about Ghana in particular. Lots of updates there. And then tomorrow, join us live as we talk about all the African leaders speaking at the UN. The UN General Assembly. There's some conversations that we're going to be having about what they discussed and what they missed, because we got a lot of thoughts and who was missing from that conversation. So stay tuned for This Week in Africa tomorrow. Next Monday will be This Week in Ghana. And hopefully this coming Sunday, we'll have something for those who are focused on Sierra Leone as well. So thanks again, guys. So this is a great question. What time tomorrow? Tomorrow is going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is tomorrow's live stream This Week in Africa. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys all on the next live stream. Bye, guys.
Bye bye. Bye bye.